Alan Wake 2 is undeniably different from its predecessor. Some of those differences are no doubt born out of necessity. It's been a full 13 years and 2 console generations since the first game's release, and a lot has changed in the interim. Player tastes, platform exclusivity, and even console and PC specifications have come a long way since 2010, and Alan Wake 2 needs to adapt in order to keep up with the times. But still, Alan Wake 2 is a sequel, and a direct sequel at that. There's obviously plenty of connective tissue between it, the first game, and alternate retelling tie-in Alan Wake's American Nightmare, along with links to Control and other titles developed by Remedy Entertainment. While Alan Wake 2 certainly does lean on the franchise's well-established traditions and often obfuscating timeline, it also makes ample use of player expectations to create a surprisingly new experience. It only stands to reason for anyone even marginally invested in the evolution of video game graphics, but Alan Wake 2 should look and perform much better than its predecessor. Alan Wake was released in 2010 and was originally exclusive to the Xbox 360, a console capable of natively supporting games at up to 720p resolution with upscaling to 1080p on higher definition TVs. Alan Wake, however, didn't take full advantage of the Xbox 360's graphical capabilities. The original game was rendered at a lower resolution of 960 to 540 and ran at 30 frames per second. Its graphics weren't revolutionary, but didn't look bad for the time. The 2021 release of Alan Wake Remastered did help breathe some new life into the game, with 4K support on some platforms. By comparison, Alan Wake 2 will release with support for both 1080p and 4K, with the potential to maintain a steady 60 FPS on systems with more powerful GPUs. Its demanding and oddly specific system requirements mean that most players won't be able to run the game at its full framerate and resolution, but even in performance mode on lower-end PCs, Alan Wake 2 should have much better graphics than the original. Again, it's no surprise that Alan Wake 2 has a completely new story from the original, even if it follows in the same footsteps. It's a direct sequel, set 13 years after Alan Wake's disappearance into the dark place at the end of the first game and its DLC. It stars a new protagonist, Saga Anderson. She's an FBI agent investigating a new string of disappearances in Bright Falls, Washington, which was also the setting of the first game. During her investigation, Saga will make use of clues left behind in Alan Wake's stories to escape a nightmare of the writer's own creation. However, Alan Wake will also be a playable character in Alan Wake 2. This should work something like a Resident Evil dual story, except with the ability to switch between the two protagonists at will. Players can either complete one campaign after the other or swap from Saga to Alan in between chapters to watch their stories unfold together. They're liable to intersect in many places, with both characters trapped in similar situations. Alan Wake 2 will also expand on the gameplay mechanics introduced in the original, while also introducing some new concepts of its own. A common criticism of the original Alan Wake was that its combat was too repetitive. It's a fair point, as there's really only one type of enemy, shadow-possessed Taken. Sure, there are variations on the theme, and a handful of unique bosses, but the strategy is pretty much always the same. Alan Wake 2 will also feature an all-new wound system, in which injury to different parts of the body may result in different effects. It's not exactly clear what this will look like yet, but there's a good model for something similar in Metal Gear Solid 3. Unlike previous Metal Gear games, which simply relied on rations for healing, MGS3 put Naked Snake through the ringer, with different types of trauma to different areas of the body, causing a variety of different health conditions. Some of them had long-term negative effects on Snake's health or stamina, but all of them had to be remedied with specific multi-stage medical procedures in the game's cure menu. Alan Wake 2 probably takes inspiration from this in the creation of its own system of injury and treatment. Alan Wake 2 also introduces the Mind Place, a new investigative feature that ensures players take a more active role in Saga's sleuthing. Players will find a variety of clues throughout the game and must physically connect the dots in Saga's Mind Place in order to progress in the story. This prevents them from becoming too passive toward the story and should help make the mystery more engaging. Players can't just sit back and watch it unfold, but must pay active attention and come up with hunches of their own. While there are definitely many things to link the two together, it'd be a mistake to expect a simple rehash of Alan Wake out of its sequel. And while it is possible to jump right into the sequel without having played any of the previous games, it's probably best to play the first two to gain a little more knowledge of their world. Alan Wake 2 may be very different from the rest of its series, but it is part of a bigger story much broader in scope. So what do you think about Alan Wake 2? Do you think this game is worth it or not? Let us know in the comments section.